Behind every Hollywood legend lies a story the cameras never captured. In 1958, on the dusty backlot of old Tucson studios, a young actress named Angie Dickinson discovered something extraordinary about teen heartthrob Ricky Nelson that would stay with her for decades. For over 60 years, Angie Dickinson kept quiet about what she witnessed on the Rio Bravo set. The small gestures, the handwritten notes, the moments when nobody was watching. What she saw would completely change how you think about one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. Because while the world knew Ricky Nelson, the performer, Angie discovered Ricky Nelson, the person. And the difference, it's about to leave you speechless. You see, there was something Ricky did every single day that transformed an entire film crew. Something so simple yet so powerful that it's still giving Angie chills decades later. What was it? And why did she wait until now to reveal the truth? Stay tuned because what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about the real Ricky Nelson. In 1958, old Tucson Studios was buzzing with the kind of energy that only happens when Hollywood magic is about to unfold. The Rio Bravo set was electric, and for good reason. Director Howard Hawks had assembled a cast that read like a who's who of American cinema. John Wayne, the undisputed king of westerns. Dean Martin, the smooth crooner turned actor. And then there were the newcomers, two rising stars who had no idea they were about to create something unforgettable. Angie Dickinson was nervous. Here she was, a young actress stepping into the big leagues, surrounded by legends who'd been making movies since before she could walk. The pressure was intense. Every scene mattered. Every line delivery could make or break her career. But what really had her on edge wasn't the cameras or the scripts. It was the uncertainty of fitting in with such an established crew. And then there was Ricky Nelson. At just 18 years old, he was already a household name. His records topped the charts. His face graced magazine covers. Teenage girls screamed his name at concerts across America. But here's what surprised everyone, including Angie. When he walked onto that dusty backlot for the first time, something was different about him. Most teen idols of that era carried themselves with a certain swagger. They knew their worth. They demanded special treatment. They kept to themselves, surrounded by handlers and yes-men. But Ricky, he did something completely unexpected. He walked right up to the crew members and introduced himself. Not Ricky Nelson, the star, just Ricky, a young guy excited to be making his first western. Angie watched this unfold with fascination. Here was someone who could have easily coasted on his fame, yet he was asking the lighting crew about their equipment. He was chatting with the stunt coordinators about their techniques. He was treating everyone from the director to the kid fetching coffee with the same genuine respect. The atmosphere Hawks created was crucial to this dynamic. He had a reputation for fostering collaboration rather than hierarchy. He wanted his actors to listen to each other, to build something authentic together. And somehow Ricky's natural humility fit perfectly into this vision. But what really caught Angie's attention wasn't just Ricky's politeness. It was his curiosity. Between setups, while other actors might retreat to their trailers or huddle with their agents, Ricky would wander around the set asking questions. How did the camera achieve that particular angle? What made the lighting look so dramatic? Could he watch the stunt rehearsal from up close? This wasn't the behavior Angie expected from a chart-topping recording artist making his movie debut. This was someone genuinely hungry to learn, to grow, to become better at his craft. And as their first scenes together approached, Angie found herself curious about something else entirely. What was this guy really like when the camera stopped rolling? The answer to that question would surprise her more than she ever imagined. Because while Ricky's public persona was all smiles and charm, what Angie discovered was something much deeper. Something that would change not just how she saw him, but how she approached her own career for decades to come. The first thing that struck Angie about Ricky Nelson wasn't his famous voice or his magazine-perfect looks. It was how he moved through the world with such genuine humility. In an industry built on ego and image, Ricky was refreshingly different. While other stars demanded special treatment or kept themselves above the fray, Ricky did something that left everyone scratching their heads. He treated the set like a classroom and everyone on it like a teacher. Picture this. It's day 3 of filming and the crew is setting up for a complex scene involving multiple camera angles. Most actors would be in their trailers staying cool and preserving their energy. But where was Ricky? Crouched next to the camera operator asking detailed questions about lens choices and shot composition. Not because he had to, but because he genuinely wanted to understand how movies were made. Angie watched this pattern repeat itself day after day. During lighting setups, Ricky would chat with the gaffers about how different techniques created different moods. When the sound crew was adjusting levels, he'd ask about microphone placement and audio quality. He approached film like a student approaches a subject they're passionate about, with endless curiosity and zero pretension. But here's what really set him apart. Despite being one of the biggest teen idols in America, Ricky never once acted like he was doing anyone a favor by being there. He was punctual to the point of arriving early. He came prepared, having studied his lines and thought about his character's motivations. And when Howard Hawks gave direction, Ricky listened with the intensity of someone who understood that every piece of advice was gold. This attitude created something magical on set. You know how some actors can make everyone around them tense? They demand perfection from others while cutting corners themselves. Ricky was the opposite. His work ethic and genuine respect for the craft elevated everyone's game. The cameramen tried new techniques because they knew Ricky would appreciate the artistry. The sound crew went the extra mile because Ricky had taken the time to understand their challenges. Angie found herself watching these interactions with growing admiration. Here was an 18-year-old who could have easily coasted on his music fame. Yet, he was putting in the work to become a legitimate actor. Not because he needed to prove anything to the public, but because he respected the people he was working with too much to give anything less than his best. And then there were the quiet moments that really revealed his character. Between takes, when the set would buzz with activity and most actors would zone out or chat about weekend plans, Ricky had a different approach. He'd notice things. If a crew member looked stressed, he'd quietly ask if everything was okay. If someone was struggling with heavy equipment, he'd lend a hand without being asked. These weren't grand gestures designed to win headlines. They were small acts of consideration that spoke to something deeper in his character. Angie began to realize that Ricky's humility wasn't an act or a publicity strategy. It was simply who he was. But what impressed her most was how he handled the pressure of being constantly watched and judged. Everyone on set knew that Ricky's performance in Rio Bravo could make or break his transition from music to movies. One bad review could have labeled him a failed crossover attempt. Yet, instead of being paralyzed by this pressure, Ricky channeled it into determination to honor the opportunity he'd been given. This is when Angie began to understand something that would stick with her for the rest of her career. True professionalism isn't about demanding respect. It's about earning it through your actions, your attitude, and your treatment of others. And watching Ricky navigate the set with such grace was like getting a masterclass in how to be a star without losing your humanity. But the real revelation was still coming. Because while everything Angie had observed so far was impressive, it was what Ricky did when he thought nobody was looking that would truly take her breath away. 3 weeks into filming, Angie Dickinson arrived on set to find something unexpected waiting for her. Tucked into her director's chair was a small piece of paper folded neatly and bearing her name in careful handwriting. She glanced around wondering who might have left it, then opened it to discover a heartfelt message from Ricky praising her previous day's performance and thanking her for helping him become a better actor. It was signed with a small doodle of a guitar. Now, you might think this was just typical Hollywood courtesy, actors supporting actors. But here's what made it special. The scene Ricky referenced was one they hadn't shared. He had no reason to watch it, no obligation to comment on it. He'd simply taken the time to observe her work, appreciate her craft, and let her know it mattered to him. And this wasn't a one-time thing. Over the following weeks, Angie discovered that these little notes had become Ricky's signature move. Not grand public gestures or showy displays of support, but quiet acknowledgements that told people their efforts were seen and valued. A grip who'd worked extra hours to perfect a camera move would find a note thanking him for his dedication. A costume assistant who'd made a last-minute alteration would discover a message praising her attention to detail. But Ricky's kindness extended beyond written words. Angie watched him develop what she came to think of as perfect timing. On grueling 14-hour days, when exhaustion was setting in and tempers were getting short, Ricky had an uncanny ability to sense exactly when the crew needed a lift. He'd casually pick up his guitar and start humming a familiar melody, not performing, not drawing attention to himself, just creating a gentle soundtrack that somehow made the work feel lighter. Or he'd crack a perfectly timed joke that would get everyone laughing, breaking the tension without disrupting the creative flow. These moments weren't planned or scripted. They emerged naturally from his genuine concern for the people around him. What struck Angie most was how Ricky's approach created a ripple effect throughout the entire production. Crew members, who might normally keep their heads down and focus only on their own tasks, began looking out for each other. The assistant directors became more patient with the younger crew members. Even John Wayne, known for his no-nonsense approach to filmmaking, was caught smiling more often and taking extra time to explain things to the newer actors. It was like Ricky had brought a different energy to the set. One that said, "We're all in this together and everyone's contribution matters." One particular incident crystallized this for Angie. They were shooting a complex scene with multiple characters and everything that could go wrong was going wrong. The lighting kept shifting due to cloud cover. The sound equipment was picking up interference from a nearby radio tower. Take after take was being ruined by technical difficulties and you could feel the frustration building among the cast and crew. That's when Ricky did something unexpected. Instead of getting impatient or retreating to his trailer like others might have, he started asking questions about the technical challenges. Not because he could solve them, but because he was genuinely interested in understanding what the crew was up against. He spent time with the sound engineer learning about the interference problem. He chatted with the lighting team about working with natural light. His curiosity and genuine concern transformed what could have been a miserable day into an impromptu learning experience. By the time the technical issues were resolved, the entire crew felt more connected and energized than they had at the start of the day. Angie realized she was witnessing something rare, leadership that wasn't about commanding from the top, but about lifting from within. Ricky wasn't trying to be the boss or the star. He was simply being human in a way that reminded everyone else to be human, too. These small gestures were creating something larger than entertainment. They were building the kind of collaborative spirit that turned good films into great ones. And for Angie, they were providing a blueprint for how she wanted to approach her own career in Hollywood. But as meaningful as these public moments were, it was what happened between her and Ricky in their private interactions that would leave the deepest impression of all. The breakthrough moment came during their 4th week of filming. Angie and Ricky were working on a particularly challenging scene, one that required subtle chemistry and perfect timing between their characters. They'd run through it several times, but something wasn't clicking. The dialogue felt forced. The emotions weren't quite landing. And you could see Howard Hawks growing increasingly concerned behind the camera. That's when Ricky did something that completely changed Angie's understanding of what it meant to be a scene partner. Instead of focusing on his own performance or getting frustrated with the repeated takes, Ricky quietly asked Hawks for a few minutes to work through the scene with Angie off camera. Not to run lines. They both knew those perfectly. But to really dig into what their characters were feeling in that moment. What followed was one of the most generous acting partnerships Angie had ever experienced. Ricky didn't approach it as the famous recording artist helping the newcomer or even as an equal sharing ideas. He came at it with genuine curiosity about her interpretation of the scene and how they could build something together that neither could create alone. Ricky asked thoughtful questions about what their characters were truly feeling beneath the surface dialogue, suggesting there were deeper emotional layers they hadn't yet explored. They spent 20 minutes talking through the subtext, exploring how their characters' past experiences informed their present interaction and discovering layers in the script that hadn't been apparent before. By the time they performed the scene again, it had transformed from good dialogue into something that felt alive and authentic. Hawks called cut and expressed his satisfaction, noting that this was exactly what he'd been hoping to capture, the magic that happens when actors truly listen to each other. From that point forward, Angie and Ricky developed a creative shorthand that made their scenes together effortless. Between takes, they'd exchange quick glances that communicated volumes about timing and energy. They'd make tiny adjustments to their performances based on what they sensed from each other, creating moments that felt spontaneous, even though they were carefully crafted. But their partnership extended beyond their shared scenes. Angie found herself looking forward to their conversations during breaks, not about Hollywood gossip or career strategies, but about the craft of acting itself. Ricky would ask thoughtful questions about her approach to character development. She'd share insights about working with established stars like Wayne and Martin. They became each other's sounding boards, offering honest feedback and genuine encouragement. What surprised Angie most was how Ricky handled being the least experienced member of such a distinguished cast. Instead of trying to prove himself or assert his star status, he positioned himself as a student. He'd asked John Wayne about his approach to physicality in Western roles. He'd picked Dean Martin's brain about timing and natural delivery. He treated every conversation as an opportunity to learn something new. This humility created an unexpected dynamic. The veteran actors began investing extra time in his development, not because they had to, but because his genuine eagerness to improve was infectious. Wayne started showing him subtle techniques for conveying authority without overacting. Martin shared insights about finding the music in dialogue delivery. Angie watched these interactions with growing respect for Ricky's emotional intelligence. He understood that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of wisdom. And his willingness to be vulnerable about his inexperience actually made the established actors want to support him more, not less. Their friendship deepened through these shared experiences of growth and discovery. They'd find quiet corners of the set where they could decompress from intense scenes or simply enjoy each other's company without the pressure of performance. These weren't romantic connections. Both were focused on their work and careers, but something equally valuable. A creative partnership built on mutual respect and genuine care. Years later, Angie would describe their collaboration as one of the most seamless of her career. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. They could challenge each other's choices, suggest different approaches, and admit when something wasn't working, all while maintaining complete trust in each other's intentions. This foundation of friendship and creative respect would prove to be crucial as they faced some of the most demanding scenes in the film. But it would also reveal yet another dimension of Ricky's character that would leave Angie even more impressed with the young man behind the famous name. 65 years have passed since those transformative months on the Rio Bravo set, and Angie Dickinson is finally ready to share what that experience taught her about greatness, legacy, and what it truly means to be a star in Hollywood. When reflecting on her career, Angie often notes that while people frequently ask her about working with legends like John Wayne or Dean Martin, and yes, they were masters of their craft, when she thinks about who influenced her approach to the business most profoundly, it was Ricky. He was 18 years old and he taught her lessons about character that she carries with her to this day. The impact of Ricky's approach extended far beyond their time together on set. Angie found herself adopting his philosophy of treating every crew member as an essential part of the creative process. Throughout her subsequent career, spanning iconic roles in films like Point Blank and the television series Policewoman, she made it a point to learn names, ask about people's families, and acknowledge the contributions of everyone from the director to the person manning craft services. As Angie explains it, Ricky showed her that being a professional isn't about maintaining distance or asserting hierarchy. It's about creating an environment where everyone can do their best work through genuine interest in people, not through grand gestures or demands for respect. This philosophy served Angie well throughout her career, but it became especially important as she transitioned into more prominent roles and eventually became a star in her own right. She credits Ricky's example with helping her navigate the pressures of fame without losing sight of what really mattered, the work itself and the people who helped bring it to life.